Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to our webinar, Editor's Guide to Remote Video Production. I am Melanie Ciotti, our marketing manager here at Studio Network Solutions, and I'm joined by my colleague, Loring Weinkoff. Loring, would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. We appreciate it. My name is Loring Weinkoff. I'm the Workflow and Product Integration Manager here at Studio Network Solutions. So thanks for participating and enjoy the show. Melanie, back to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Loring. And yes, to echo that, we are very excited to have you all here with us today to talk about remote video production and remote editing. Now, this topic is on everyone's minds these days, obviously with the pandemic we're going through and everything that's going on in 2020. So we're here to talk about some resources that can help you improve your workflow when you can't physically be in the studio for whatever reason, whether that's now due to temporary closures or in the future when you want to finish up an editing job when you're traveling for another shoot, or maybe you want to engage a freelancer from out of state or out of the country and you can't bring them into the office, or you're snowed in or preparing for hurricane season, or really whatever reason there might be where you can't get into the office or studio. Over the next probably 30 minutes or so, we're going to cover best practices for remote video editing workflows. I'll start off with a little history lesson about offline editing, where it came from, how it works. And then I'll get into our top 8 tips, tricks, and resources that will help you improve your remote workflow both today and well into the future. Let's go ahead and get started. The history of offline editing. Well, remote and offline editing are often used interchangeably. If you aren't familiar with the term, offline editing is when an editor makes their cuts and creative decisions based on a low-res offline copy rather than the raw footage itself. Then they bring those edits online later on once they already have their final cut or their edit decision list ready. So your raw footage stays intact and untouched. You're making your editorial decisions on this offline, typically low-res copy, then you relink or apply those edits to the original online footage. So that's what we mean when we say offline editing. It has nothing to do with your internet connection. It's really just whether you're using the full res raw footage or a lower res copy. And this process of offline editing is definitely not new to the industry. In the early days of film production, editors would cut, glue, and manipulate a work print or a positive copy of the footage, leaving their original film negative protected from damage and handling. Then technology evolved from open reels to VCR tapes, and the online-offline process still remained mostly the same. You'd create your edit decision list offline, then enter the online editing suite with your master source tapes to finish the final show. And then came the digital revolution. No more VCRs, although my parents' collection of Disney movies on VHS will forever hold a place in my heart and in their garage. But once everything was digitized, we still needed to do some offline editing. We got HD footage before we could easily edit HD footage, then 4K, 6K, 8K. Resolution always seems to outpace the rest of the editing process's infrastructure. So editors would make their low-res copies, cut, and recut, then conform back to the high-res footage. It's worth mentioning here, though, that offline editing, while it clearly isn't new, it isn't this outdated or archaic process either. Some, even many production houses that have all the infrastructure in place to do their editing online in studio simply prefer to work in an offline process. It's easier to send freelancers offline footage. It's easier to work from home with offline footage, which is the premise of today's presentation. And it's a completely suitable long-term process that many post houses use all the time, not just in times of crisis. So that's a brief history of offline editing. And you can probably imagine why that's important for our discussion on remote editing or remote video production. If you're working on a low-res offline copy of your media, the files should be small enough to take with you pretty much anywhere. Download it to your laptop, put it in the cloud, and you can bring it down later. Or use a spare hard drive you got at a trade show. Your media becomes this lightweight, portable package that you can take with you wherever you need to go. You can get some work done at the airport or hotel when you're traveling for a shoot, but you have a deadline to meet on a different project. You can expand your freelance talent pool by sending offline copies to freelancers across the country or around the world. Work doesn't have to just happen at your studio anymore. And while the sky's the limit for where you can take your offline editing projects, transitioning to a remote or hybrid workflow can definitely be turbulent. To help you manage that transition, whether you're just starting out or you've been at this remote editing thing for months or even years, we've put together a list of our top 8 tips for remote video production. These practical and highly effective tips, we're hoping, will help you maximize your productivity and creative output when you're working from home, on set, traveling, collaborating with freelancers, or otherwise just not physically in the studio. And honestly, some might help when you're in the studio too. Offline editing helps you work from anywhere, and the studio is still somewhere. We're going to start off a bit broad with some general work from home tips. Then we'll narrow down and get more complex to talk about specific workflows and pain points. Our first tip is to optimize your remote workstation. This one might sound simple, but you would be surprised by how many people have been working from home for months or even years who haven't really optimized their space to work for them. The best case scenario is to pick a room away from the noisy common areas where you can just close the door and shut out all distractions. For many of us though, that home office oasis simply doesn't exist. Instead, we have to make do with what we have. I personally am in my dining room right now. I can't close the door and shut out all distractions or tell my neighbors to stop mowing their lawn, but I can still optimize my space in other ways. I added a leaf to my dining room table so there's more space. I have my display propped up on a riser and my laptop stacked on 2 board games, so everything's at the right height. I was listening to a podcast yesterday where an Emmy award-winning TV anchor said she used a stuffed animal Mickey Mouse to hold up her iPhone for her first live from home broadcast. And sure, it isn't ideal to use board games and stuffed animals to make your workstation functional when you're used to all this high-tech equipment at the studio, but many of our home office problems just require a little creativity and ingenuity. Take a few minutes to really think about optimizing your workstation. Don't just be a victim of circumstance. Control the controllables, buy some accessories if you need to, and do what you can to make your workstation work for you. The second tip is to maximize your bandwidth. When you set up your home internet, chances are you weren't planning on downloading 4K footage over that 25 megabit connection. After the presentation, go to speedtest.net and check your internet speed. If you think that's enough for what you need to do working from home, great. If not, this tip is for you. You'll want to consider both your upload and your download speed. Some connections are symmetrical, meaning your upload and download speeds are the same, so this question wouldn't really apply. But most residential areas have asymmetrical internet connections where your upload speed is really just a fraction of the download speed. So you want to make sure that both are sufficient for your work. You'll also want to test your office internet or wherever your Evo or shared storage is, because you'll be limited by the lowest speed anywhere in your workflow as you push and pull your media. So if you're maximizing your bandwidth at home, you could still be limited by the office network speed if you're connecting to that remotely. Either way, I do recommend plugging into your modem directly via an Ethernet cable if at all possible. It's a more reliable connection than Wi-Fi, and you want reliability when you're uploading and downloading your media. Now, for most machines, you can probably just plug in directly. For me, I don't even have an Ethernet port on my laptop, so I would need to get a separate Ethernet to USB-C connector. So again, think about it, optimize your space, maximize your bandwidth, plug into Ethernet if you can. Then share your schedule with your family and roommates. You don't want Zoom school or a Netflix binge session to slow down the work on your projects. You probably can't monopolize the internet in your house, but you can coordinate a reasonable schedule to minimize bottlenecks and stallouts. One thing that I'll talk about a bit later on, but it's good to mention here, is with Evo, we have a built-in automations engine called Slingshot. And with Slingshot, you can schedule your downloads, uploads, and backups to run at certain times, like when the kids are asleep. This can be a huge help when scheduling large data transfers from home without bogging down your home internet. And finally, if you need to, upgrade your plan or your internet service provider. There could be some good rates out there if you switch providers or if you just give them a call and negotiate with your provider for a different plan. If you do this, look into getting a business account. You'll be working from home after all, so it's a home-based business. From my experience with business internet, the customer service is better, they're quicker to respond to outages, the speeds are better, and the pricing is pretty reasonable. So compare your residential and business internet options in your area and maximize your bandwidth within your budget. Third, remotely connect to your on-prem network storage. Again, this sounds like a no-brainer that you would need to connect back to the office, but the tip here is really more about how to connect to your on-prem storage. There are two main ways that you can do this, via a VPN connection or a remote desktop. A VPN, or virtual private network, is a safe and secure way to access a private network, like your studio network connection, over a public network from home, the airport Wi-Fi, or whatever internet connection you might be on. And it's super user-friendly. You'd be connected to your internet at home, click on the VPN icon in your taskbar or the start menu, log in with a username and password, and boom, you're in. There's a little more to that when it comes to setup, but from a user perspective, it's very easy. Some of you may already have a VPN in place that connects to your shared storage. Some of you might have a corporate VPN that gives you access to HR files, but doesn't touch the shared storage and therefore doesn't give you access to your media. And still others might not have a VPN set up at all. We've heard all of these scenarios from our users, so our engineers got to work on a solution for those who needed reliable, simple, and above all else, secure access to their Evo files when they weren't in the studio. And we've now released our newest solution, SNS VPN. SNS VPN is a cloud-hosted virtual private network made exclusively for Evo. Again, you can access your Evo shared storage remotely from any VPN service that you set up for remote access. But if you don't have one set up yet, you don't know how to get a VPN connection, or you've been trying to get a VPN set up and it's just turned into this long, arduous process, we can help with that. SNS VPN is super easy to set up and configure, and it can be deployed rapidly without significant changes to your firewall and network infrastructure. Another thing that's great about VPN though, whether it's SNS VPN or another VPN service, is that you can access share browser media asset management from home over your VPN. That means searching, tagging, commenting, collaborating on your media files from home. The other popular way to access your shared storage remotely is with a remote desktop software like TeamViewer or LogMeIn. There are more remote desktop apps too. I think Microsoft has one called Remote Desktop Connection, and there are a few other softwares out there that will do this for you. But basically, what you're doing with a remote desktop connection is you're logging into your in-studio workstation from your laptop or your machine at home. You'd be like your own tech support, controlling your computer from miles away. You just need to make sure that your workstation back at the office is turned on and connected to the network. Then you can use TeamViewer or another software to take control of that machine. This is a perfectly viable method for connecting to your on-prem storage. We typically recommend the VPN service as there's a bit less lag time and a couple fewer steps to get to your files However, both are very popular and very efficient ways of accessing your files and getting your media from the studio to your remote workstation without toting around a bag full of hard drives. Our fourth tip is to use proxies whenever possible. Proxies are those low-res offline copy files that we talked about in our little history lesson. Using these will help you conserve bandwidth so you aren't downloading 4K raw footage. It's also important for both expected and unexpected instances of remote editing. Like if you're expecting to take some projects home to work on over the weekend, or if your flight was canceled unexpectedly and you aren't going to make it back to the office on time, you're stuck in Denver for another day or two. If you have your source files in your shared storage, how do you get proxy files for remote editing? Well, one way is to use Evo. As you upload media to your Evo shared storage, it's automatically indexing and transcoding that media, creating proxy files for you, or as we call them, your share browser preview files. These proxies, again, are automatically created, and then with Nomad, our remote editing utility, you can easily download those proxies to your workstation for offline editing. Adobe Media Encoder is another option for proxy creation. It's an integrated encoding engine for Premiere Pro, After Effects, and other tools in the Creative Cloud suite. You can just tell Premiere what files you want to create proxies of, and it automatically creates them. You can also use Media Encoder as a standalone encoder as well. Apple Compressor, as I'm sure you can imagine, is optimized for encoding and proxy creation with Final Cut Pro 10. And DaVinci Resolve can also create proxy files just as is in the NLE. You can load your original clips and batch export the compressed clips. You would typically do that when exporting color corrected files, but you can also batch export your files as proxies. Creating proxies in any software can take a while though, depending on how much media you have to transcode, how long the files are, if it's 30 seconds versus 3 minutes, and how much compression you're putting on it. We tried to minimize that waiting period by having Evo automatically transcode your media upon ingest, so the proxies are ready as soon as you need them. But if you're using another transcoder, you should play around a bit to find the settings you like, apply it to everything, and set it to run overnight so you have your files ready to go in the morning. Now, I mentioned that Nomad helps retrieve your proxy files so you can use them in your project. Let's dive a little deeper into how that works. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see that Evo is automatically transcoding and indexing that media upon ingest, which is a key component to our media management and remote editing workflow. You can see at the bottom, the editors in the studio are connected directly to their Evo shared storage and can access their 4K and 8K footage for online editing. They can also download the low-res proxies if they wanted to work offline while they're in the studio, or if they wanted to prep their workstation so that they can use those low-res proxies at home. Say they want to work from home tomorrow. To the left, we have our remote-based editors working from their homes. They could be next door, down the street, in another country, anywhere they needed to be. They're all connected to their in-studio Evo via a VPN or remote desktop. So now they have access to see the 4K and 8K footage, as well as the low-res proxies, because they can use share browser and they can access that media. They can see those files, but they don't have them on their physical workstation yet. Nomad, our remote editing utility, lives on the remote editor's workstations. Following the dotted line at the top, it retrieves the proxy files and source media that they need from their Evo and delivers those files to their workstation so they can use them for offline editing. No matter where you are, you can grab those proxy files and keep your projects moving forward. Number 5 is to standardize your folder structures and file naming. Some of you will probably roll your eyes at me for this one because I know most of you are very particular and protective of your process. But when you're moving to a remote or hybrid workflow, standardization is key. Not only is it easier to collaborate and find the files you need when folders are structured and named properly, it also saves time and hassle in the conform process when you're relinking your media back to the high-res footage. Be predictable with your file paths so you don't spend tons of time trying to relink over and over again because your paths are broken. One of Nomad's superpowers is that when it retrieves the proxy and source files from your Evo and brings them down to your workstation, it actually mirrors the same folder structure that those files have on your Evo. This makes it much easier to relink your media after you're done editing. You just point to the root of the high-res version of that media and it should link up without any issues. Now, I don't have a blanket recommendation for what everyone's standards should be. My best advice would be to pick one and stick with it, especially when you're using an on-prem and remote hybrid workflow. If you need more help standardizing your folders, though, there are several utilities out there that can help you make file folder templates. Post haste is one that I know Loring is familiar with. Just whatever you do, make it a habit, formalize it, and standardize it across your studio. Tip number 6 is to stay organized. When you're used to having a centralized workforce, going remote can easily cause breakdowns in team communication and collaboration, and timelines can start to go astray. To stay organized, focus on these 3 things: communication, universal metadata, and project management. Communication is key in any collaborative work environment. But now that you're no longer a stress ball toss away from the person you want to talk to, you might need to look into finding new methods of facilitating team communication. Slack, Skype, Google Meet or Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, these are all great platforms for instant messaging, audio and video calls, and screen sharing. And I'm not sure if you know this, but Google Meet even has this pretty advanced auto caption functionality. And that's just built into Gmail without any extra cost. You might need to invest in some new technologies to make remote communication easier for your team, but chances are you probably already have access to some of these tools, and you just need to start using them more often and more effectively. Next, I think universal custom metadata is one of the biggest things that people don't necessarily take advantage of. With Share Browser, Evo's built-in media asset management software, you can search your media and quickly find all of your footage with a certain tag. You can leave comments, which, going back to the previous point, facilitates better communication within your team. You can keep your media organized with all this metadata, so it's easier to access what you need when you need it. A quick side note about Share Browser. Share Browser works with all of the major NLEs, and with in-app extensions for Final Cut, Premiere, and After Effects, you can see all of your tags, comments, and other metadata without having to leave the NLE itself. There's also a desktop version of Share Browser and an easy-to-use web app. So as long as you're connected to your studio network via VPN, for example, you can search, tag, and comment as much as you want from wherever you are. So you're not just using the metadata that's already in Share Browser, you can actively add to it from remote locations as well. Finally, it can be hard to know who's working on which projects when you can't easily see everyone in the studio. So project management might need to look a little different in a remote or hybrid workflow. To save money, maybe try using Google Docs to keep track of progress, or invest in a project management software like Asana. Schedule a weekly meeting or a daily meeting if you have to, so that your team knows what's expected of them and when. Those natural, hey, what are you up to today conversations, they're not happening as much anymore in a remote workflow. So we might need to be a bit more direct in how we handle project management. Think back to your shared storage. I'll say it again. Think back to your shared storage. All of the media that you're using in a remote video production setting should be uploaded to your shared storage. This helps avoid issues in finishing and also protects your files through automated backup and replication jobs. Let's say, for example, you're working on a project from home. You've already downloaded your proxy files and source media to your home workstation with Nomad. But there's this really cool music track that you want to use that you found online. That music doesn't live on your shared storage yet. So when you go to relink your media to the high-res originals, that track will still be offline. It'll be blank. It won't play because you didn't sync it back to your shared storage. I've heard this scenario a lot, and most people, they only talk about remote video production in the sense of bringing your media home with you. But the reverse trip is just as important. You need to get those files back to your shared storage so you can finish your projects, not just make a little progress on them from home. Syncing your files back to Evo is also important for backup and replication. I mentioned earlier that with Slingshot, you can schedule your file automations to run when the kids are asleep. The most popular use of Slingshot, though, is our automated replication jobs. You can schedule your Evo to automatically back up your files to another Evo, Evo Nearline, cloud storage, or even a third-party server, so you have your media backed up in case of a disaster or emergency. If you're working from home, are you backing up your files to the cloud or wherever you need to back up your files to? Are you creating those redundancies for disaster recovery? My guess is probably not. Sync your files back to your shared storage so you have that backup and replication peace of mind, and so you don't have any issues when relinking and finishing your projects. Finally, our last tip, make friends with tech support. I know we are all a little outside of our comfort zones right now, but you shouldn't have to navigate this new territory alone. Check in with your IT department if you have one. See what they recommend. Reach out to friends and colleagues in the industry to see what they're doing. And always feel comfortable reaching out to the SNS support team. Our tech support isn't here just to solve problems with our products. They go far above and beyond to troubleshoot workflow issues. Just let us know, hey, I've got this problem, and I wanted to see if you had any solutions that might help. We might have just fixed that same workflow issue for another user last week, and we can either solve it for you or at least point you in the right direction to help you get started. Sometimes the biggest challenge can simply be not knowing who can help you with something, not knowing where to turn, and as a result, just trying to wing it. As my final resource to you, consider this a personal invitation to reach out to the SNS support team if you have any issues with your shared storage, remote production, hybrid workflow, and simply don't know where to start. You can always start with us. If you're still confused on how to connect to your shared storage remotely or how to get a VPN set up, or you just want to ask what other tools might work well for your specific workflow, make friends with tech support, either at your company, at SNS, at some other company or some other technology that you're using. Just don't try to go it alone. There's already enough isolation going around these days. Reach out and let's find a solution together. Here are those top 8 tips again, in order, all together. First, you want to optimize your home workstation and be creative if you need to. Maximize your bandwidth, both at home and at the office, and remember, for both upload and download speeds. Remotely connect to your on-prem storage via a VPN or remote desktop application, and use proxies whenever possible, either through the ones that your Evo automatically transcodes or using a standalone transcoder. Standardize your folder structures and file naming so that relinking is much easier and less likely to break. Stay organized with new means of communication, custom universal metadata, and project management tools. Sync back to your shared storage for file replication and to avoid issues in relinking and finishing. And finally, don't go it alone. Make friends with tech support and reach out with the questions you have. As a recap on remote video production with Evo, keep in mind that Evo is much more than just shared storage. It's a complete workflow solution for post-production, broadcast, and VFX teams. You get high-performance shared storage, plus powerful and easy to use media asset management with Share Browser, robust file automation and API integrations with Slingshot, and of course, our new remote editing utility, Nomad. All of these software tools are included free in unlimited fashion with all new EVOs. And our products are scalable to accommodate your storage and workflow needs, from the Evo Prodigy desktop unit shown here to multiple 16-bay EVOs and Evo Nearline units with petabyte expandability. Thank you very much for attending today's presentation, attending our webinar here, Editor's Guide to Remote Video Production. I have the links up here again. If you are interested in a one-on-one remote workflow consultation, that top link is for you. You can also get there from the big How to Buy button on our website. If you're interested in more direct training, you can get up to 3 hours with Loring to answer all of your workflow questions. Go to studionetworksolutions.com/training. And then, of course, we do have some more resources available on our YouTube page. Thanks again so much for your time, and have a great day, everybody.